This lesson is for XEI 201. We're going to exhibit knowledge of basic expressions. I do want to note first that in order to make sure that you're prepared for this lesson, you should review your word wall. It has a lot of vocabulary and terminology that you need, so you should already have a picture of this on your iPad. Take a few seconds just to review this before you begin your skill sheets. But you can also view a video for BOA 201 in Unit 1. That has the words, and we explain a lot of those words from the word wall. Okay, so to start, I want to explain a concept to you guys that you're probably familiar with already, but let's just review. When you don't know what the quantity of a number is, you use a variable to represent that quantity. So, for example, I have here, a farmer sells apples and peaches at his farm. Let A represent the number of apples he sells, and P will represent the number of peaches. So in this case, we don't know exactly how many apples or peaches that he sells, so instead of using a specific number, we're going to place a variable, which we use as a letter, to represent that amount. So our first question here says to write the following expressions using these variables. So I want to write the quotient of A and P. So this is why I need to know my word wall, because the word quotient appears. So the word quotient means to divide. So I'm going to take A over P. A divided by P. This would be the quotient of A and P. So notice I'm not using numbers anymore. I'm just leaving it as A over P with variables. In number 2, it says I need the product of A and P. I can write this a couple different ways. I can write this as AP. When you don't put a multiplication sign in between, it's assumed that you're multiplying these two. You could also write A with a dot and then P. Or you could write A and then parentheses P, or one set of parentheses like this. All of this means to multiply, so each and every single one of these are just your options to write the product of A and P. Now the reason why I did not use one where I do A times P like this is because this can be confused for the variable X, right? So when we write stuff with variables, we don't want to use the old school multiplication sign. That would be wrong, okay? Alright, so this third problem here, it says twice P. So this is the same as 2 times P. And I just went over a couple different things and a couple different ways of how you could rewrite this. So we could write this as 2P. We could write this as 2 with the dot P. We could write this with 2 and the P in parentheses. Or we could write this as 2 and then parentheses around the P. All of these all mean the same thing, 2 times P. The only thing we don't want to rewrite this as is 2 times P with that X that looks like multiplication, but it looks like an X, so we don't want to do that. Okay, the next portion here, sometimes you're going to be translating something that is in an expression already with variables, and then you're going to say what it means in words. So here I have X minus Y. I'm going to use the words from our word wall. This would be the difference between X and Y. Okay, you could also say the difference of X and Y. Now for number 5, X, Y, we talked about what that looks like. When we don't see a sign in there, we know that this is just the product. This is the product of X and Y. Okay? And number 6, when we see 3X, this means 3 times X. Okay, now you're going to see word problems as well here, and you're going to be able to explain what that is, the expression, using variables. So here it says Stephen buys the same type of gum that costs $2.49 per package. Use G to represent the number of packages of gum. Write an expression that shows how much Stephen spends on gum. Well, we know that G is going to represent the number of packages of gum. And we have the amount that he's supposed to spend on each package, which is $2.49. So if I want to write an expression of how much he spends total, I would take $2.49 and multiply that amount by G. This would be the expression that tells me how much he spends on gum in total. So I could write that as 249 G, whoops, forgot the 9, without that little dot right here in between, so 249 G. Alright, and finally we have an extension skill in this unit, or this particular skill for 201, XEI 201, and that's to simplify by combining like terms. So the directions here tell me to simplify, and I'm noticing that I have the same variable in each of these terms. If I want to simplify this, all I need to do is add up the coefficients, that's the number in front of the variable. And if you see, I actually circled the number as well as the sign in front. I circled the number and the sign in front of that number. Now this 3 in the beginning doesn't have a sign in front, but I'm going to assume that that sign was positive, okay, because it's a positive 3. So all I need to do in my calculator is type in 3 plus 8 and then minus 4. This will combine all of those numbers, and then I'm going to attach the x at the end. So if I type that into my calculator, 3 plus 8 minus 4, I get 7. So the answer to 3x plus 8x minus 4x is 7, and then I attach the x, 7x. I don't need to do anything with the x's other than make sure I put that on the end of that coefficient, the 7. Alright, the next one says to simplify x minus 4 and 2x plus 1. I'm going to rewrite this as x minus 4 and then plus 2x plus 1. I should write the sum of. Let's take the sum of it. Okay, so that's why I'm adding the two expressions here. Now, again, I want to look at stuff that is a like term. So x and this 2x are like terms. I'm going to circle the 2 and this x here. What's the variable, or I'm sorry, what's the number of that variable here in front? Well, it's just a 1. There's 1x. Usually we don't write in 1x, we just write it in as x. So in this case, when I add x plus 2x, I need to get 3x. A lot of students at first will write this as 2x because they don't see a number here, but you should know now that there is a number out in front of there, and that's why we would get 3x here, okay? Alright, so when I add, I can only add the x terms together, and I can only add number terms together. So this negative 4, I'm going to box that with this plus 1. So I'm using different symbols so that I remind myself that I can only combine stuff that has the like term. So x and 2x, those are like terms. Negative 4 and 1, because those are just numbers, I can simplify those. So if I simplify the sum of these two expressions, I get x plus 2x, 3x. And for negative 4 plus 1, I type that into my calculator. Negative 4 plus 1, and I get negative 3. So the sum of both of those is 3x minus 3. Okay, you're going to do a few problems just like that. Make sure that you guys are getting them checked as you work through them. Nice job.